And we could form a lower low. We could. This could retrace back up and form a lower high and then a lower low in and around this region. That could, and you can see how pinpointed this point is, bring us back down to basically 43k. Is it bearish though? No. Is it? No. Yes, short term bearish, but not a bear market. I did say it was a possibility. Now what do we do? So hi everyone, welcome to the channel. If you are new, please do subscribe at the bell button, leave a like and a comment as always. Now, we're going to talk about the market. We're going to go over the news in terms of why this kind of may be happening, but we always knew it was going to come out in terms of correctional kind of bias of we've pushed a lot, we've got to pull back at some point, right? So do not, if you are panicking. So overall, we've lost roughly around about 11%. I'll give it a refresh. Yeah, 11.85%. Oops. So never going to look good. In terms of Satoshi values, I'm looking alright-ish, but USD slaughtered pretty much. So it's not nice feeling. But we'll go over the news in terms of why this is kind of happening. There's been like basically 24 hours of hell essentially in terms of certain things that have came out. Interesting, I know. But some of it is very, very interesting to listen to and read and watch and understand, but we also got to figure out the facts here. So the first one came out was NatWest, probably one of the biggest banks in the UK, obviously Bank of Westminster, stating that they do not want to do business with anyone who are basically accepting and transacting with cryptocurrency. That's kind of a big thing now. You may not think it's a big thing, but this is one of the biggest banks in, basically one of the biggest banks in the world, essentially. And it's like any other bank in the UK and around the world. Adapt or die, right? They're not adapting. They'll probably die at some point, who knows? But they have been bailed out loads of times by the state because of what they are, who they are, their history. But yeah, one of those, it's a nightmare. But more pressing news regarding exchange. Now, this was interesting. Now, the Korean minister says 200 cryptocurrency exchanges in the country face a risk of closing down. Now, if you don't know this, Korea are pretty big in crypto, essentially, right? And this, this statement comes really out of the blue. And it's definitely interesting to see that what kind of regulation impact this could have, especially when they're talking about September. Huge elements of this. So you got new KYC policy, stricter regulations, different tax scheme, and requiring all crypto businesses to register within the country. They've gone real strict. They've gone probably a bit too far too quickly if that is ever going to be a case. So keep an eye on it. This is definitely an ongoing development. But what we've got to remember here, as I say before, right, Korea, three of the largest cryptocurrency ones traded nearly 20 billion in the last day. So they actually do have a lot of volume going through, especially in their country alone. So it's not to be kind of brushed off essentially. Yes, there's other countries that are much bigger, but it's still a market. It's still a market that could be affected. And it's going to, bring potentially other people to other exchanges, obviously. But at the end of the day, it's clear. The Asian market is important for cryptocurrency. That's kind of the way it is. But thought I'd mention that. That's always going to be a bit of rumbling as well. The next news obviously comes out of America. You probably already guessed what I'm going to talk about here. Mr. Joe Biden has decided to put a new tax tariff. It's not out yet. It's a proposal, so it may not happen. But new taxes on the wealth is obviously going to rattle a few feathers, rattle a few people especially. When you start talking about, the infrastructure of taxation, they're looking to raise it from, I think it's, here we go. We'll boost the capital gains tax from 39.6% to over, essentially, potentially 43.4%. So the thing is with America, and I don't know if you know this, but certain states have different tax levels as well. So in some states it'll be much higher than what is obviously on this piece of paper, on this website essentially. So it's going to be interesting, but basically the tax for the wealthy on capital gains is going to be higher, which is always going to do one thing and one thing only. It's going to rattle the rich, isn't it? Let's be honest. So if you are a rich person in America and you're waking up to this, or you've seen it last night, there's a reason for it. This was obviously the information was coming out. So obviously you can see here the market dipped. So if I put a cursor on there, you've seen it dipped quite aggressively. Looking at the futures this morning, very much unsettled. It's been really up and down throughout the night. So make or break in terms of when you watch this video, probably would have already played out in terms of what the reaction is. But at the end of the day, the biggest problem with crypto is, and this is why I always say it, it's a liquid market 24/7, right? Problem. If the stock market shits themselves and it closes, they've got to get liquidity for the next day. Where are they going to pull it from? The most liquid open market, which is only cryptocurrency at the moment, which we all know about. So you got to think, if people are over leveraged and on them put calls or whatever, and they've got to pay for fees and the market tanks because of certain news that they weren't expecting, guess what? They're going to pull it from somewhere, which is probably why things have happened. Now, conspiracy theory time, right? I mentioned a tweet, make sure you follow me, that it's all a bit weird that this has happened, right? What makes it weird is this. I know what I'll do. I'm going to make this little proposal, make people do a taxable event. It would increase revenue for the country. But what is interesting as well, what came out basically not long after it. Coinbase have finally, after all these years, listed Tether. Why is this interesting? The biggest and most popular platform for people in America, as it stands, is Coinbase, right? That's no denying it. The most liquid and obvious choice of a stable currency is Tether. It's by far the most liquid, it's the most demanding, and you can trade it with pretty much all the big boys, essentially. Obviously, you can see here all the currencies. So you got BTC, Ethereum, obviously USD, Euro, Pound, USD, USDC, and then you got all the other ones as well. So I'm meeting all the other trading supports coming out for other coins. So it all looks a bit strange. Is it like they knew that this was going to come out and they thought, you know what we'll do? May well trigger a chain reaction here. What are people most likely going to be sending over? Tether or USDC or Binance stable currency? Who knows? But most likely going to be this. Yeah, it smells a bit odd. Anyways, shall we look at some charts? I think we should. Now, as I alluded to at the start of this video, a flashback. I've never used Flashback before. Hey, this is kind of what's playing out. I kind of expected it a little bit, but I wasn't too hopeful that it would happen so quickly. I always, I don't rule out anything, but this is an obvious corrective pattern. Now, people are getting a little bit panicky. The RSI is going to a nice little area. This is the reset we were looking for a long time, right? It's one of those things where people don't want it when it's here, but they want it when it's not there, if that makes sense. So it's like, oh, I really want to buy this dip. I can't wait to get in. And yeah, and it happens like, it's one of those, right? It's a mental thing, right? The one thing that's given me hope is the fact that the dominance chart slotted right the way back up and it's come back down, right? Every single time Bitcoin takes an aggressive dip, this will happen because people will be basically shitting themselves, selling altcoin positions into Bitcoin or into other elements just to try and solidify what they've got or take profits just in case things get worse. That always happens, but as it seems to be coming back down. Now, if we start to talk about the likes of Ethereum, mentioned it yesterday on video, it's popped to the upside. It's obviously going to, it was always going to somewhat reject, but basically this level here needs to basically become a support level. So we'll see what happens. But in terms of Ethereum, it still doesn't look too bad, realistically, in my opinion. So obviously with, this is a low, this is a high, it retraced 618, popped all the way up to this point. Now it's back down to these levels. It's back into this liquidity zone. So we'll see what happens, see if that actually still plays out. We'll see. I won't move anything just yet. Now, let's talk about the main obvious chart. Now, this is where people are starting to, in my opinion, panic a little bit, right? Obviously, this is now became a 32% correction. Has it ended yet? No. Yes, we are below the EMA. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world if we are below it. We can be below it for a few days. We have been in the past. You can see there's been a few times where it closes below it a little bit. A few times here as well. One time here as well. So it's not too bad, right? The one thing I want to look at more than anything is the higher time frames. I want to look at the 3-day chart, which I do feel that we could still go down and correct towards it, which is always going to be scaring people, which would actually give us another 100 billion to come off, maybe, who knows. But the weekly time frame as well, still lagging. So yes, it's looking pretty awful, but at the end of the day, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little corrections and a few big ones within that. Obviously, you can see 35%, 33%, 32% right now. So It is not uncommon. Do not panic. But we are still in a pretty decent market, in my opinion, a decent market. I still think this market has still got a long way to go. Corrections need to happen. We had a very nice, obvious divergence here, potentially, even though you can't read much into those because they are just massive index charts, but it's always important to look at. Now, total market cap completely again, similar sort of situation where obviously you got a divergence. It was going to pull back. It had to pull back. It's just the way it is. This one looks a bit more meaty because Bitcoin's taken a bigger dip, but zooming out, it looks all right. You know, a week ago, pretty low and then bounced back up from this point, essentially. So, yes, it is unsettling. Yes, it is uncertainty that is fueling this because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But at the end of the day, people have been waiting in the wings for dips like this. People have been looking forward to these. There's a lot of weak hands that will sell. There's a lot of people that will be panicking right now. But for me, looking at it, profit's king, right? I've been taking profit over the last few weeks. I've been documenting on my Twitter. I showed you a screenshot of what I've been doing on Swissborg and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, as long as you are relaxing in terms of the equity that you put in, it will make a big difference. Now, what do I mean by being relaxed about it? If you know what you're getting yourself into, you know how much you're willing to spend and risk all kinds of good stuff like that in terms of your position sizes. Life is a lot easier when these days happen. If you are also that person who's more than happy to buy when it's going down, you're going to have a much bigger increased chance of success, essentially, in my opinion anyways, because you're not worried about the short term. You're more looking forward to the long term of the rewards of getting that dip. Now, if we're looking at some coins on the off chance right now, and just to blurt some out to you, there's some unbelievable opportunities in my opinion. If I actually tell you what I'll do, I'll go to my crypto alerts, which is pretty much more coins. If you go to change and you look at the worst ones, you got an $8.30 Theta, which is an interesting proposition. Zilliqa, just under 14 cents, right? That's pretty interesting. Reserve rights back down to 7 cents. That's crazy in itself. You got KSM at $300. Unbelievable. Parachains have not gone live yet. You got Polkadot under $30 as well. You got VeChain back down to 16. You got Aave basically $318, sorry. Crazy, right? $1 Cardano. These are big coins that are looking pretty interesting for the future alone, right? Pretty awesome. And obviously you got down here the BTC pairs. They're not as bad, nowhere near as bad. And you got some of them actually in pluses right now. So keep an eye on it, right? Keep an eye on it. Do not worry too much. But as I say, right, if you're looking for things to kind of buy and jump into, just go to the lowest point. If you are interested in these coins, or you were interested like last week, you should still be interested now. Even though the arse has fallen out, essentially, they are still the exact same coin unless something fundamentally horrible has changed with them. But when you start looking at the likes of Theta is a great example here, right? The way that it was all the way up here at one point, it was the best thing since sliced bread, and you are not taking the opportunity to even consider it now. That makes me question, are you in cryptocurrency for the right reason or not? So yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I will see you again on Monday, I presume, unless something crazy happens over the weekend, and I may do an emergency video. No, I'm not. Sod yous. I'm having a weekend off. I'm going to go and chill out in the garden. Why not?